The following program is being brought to you by Reign of Fire Radio, a media outreach arm of Reign of Fire Evangelical Ministries. Our commitment is to sponsor programs that will assist in living a Christian life and win others through teaching the finished work of Jesus Christ. Welcome to Delivered or Deceived with your host, Rand Berkey. Rand is a former cult member who now educates people on the dangers of these types of groups, as well as people who would seek to exploit and terrorize others. Rand has devoted his life to providing assistance to those who have been hurt. No one wants to be led through the wilderness by a guide who has never been there. He has, and his desire is that you will find yourself delivered and not deceived.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Reign of Fire Christian Radio. This is your host, Rand Berkey, and we start the program off like we always do with the scripture of Luke 4:17 through 19. And Jesus was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. When he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord." Christ is the message, and I'm only the bearer of the message. Now, last week, we started on the introduction to the book in my life of Delivered from Deception. Delivered from Deception. I will give you a link when I post it to Facebook, and you'll be able to buy the book on Amazon.com. And there's other locations, but Amazon.com is a really great place to buy it. So anyway, I plug for them. Now, in the introduction, I set the stage of the time of the situation that I was involved with, and also the attitudes, the climate of the country that had changed from the 1960s to the 1970s, where the cults really in the mid-70s up through the 80s and the first part of the 90s, they were really flourishing. All sorts of groups, Transcendental Meditation, the Hare Krishnas, Scientology is still going on, the Moonies, all your big names. And then there's, terrorist groups that have, cult tendencies like Boko Haram. We have the Taliban. We have Hezbollah, which have the same type of mindsets as people that are in cults. And I'll probably talk about that later on in some of the other chapters and some of the other broadcasts. But what I'd like you to do is go to the May 2nd, and that's where you'll find the introduction to Delivered from Deception. I really would suggest that you listen to that. You can find it on Spreaker.com, or actually iHeartRadio. Just look for Reign of Fire Christian Radio or Reign of Fire Radio on iHeart. And not only will you can get this past broadcast, but you can get a broadcast of a whole lot of broadcasts that I've done over the course of the last few years. But the introduction to this is important because it sets the stage for this chapter, which is called Snatched. So without further ado, what I'd like to talk to you about now is terrorism, totalism, mind control, thought reform, brainwashing. Just recently, matter of fact, today, I'm dating this, but today I saw that there was a halfway has or program or whatever to try to convert or break down terrorists. As I was listening to the news about this, I'm thinking, okay, so there's a right idea in order to get people out of the terrorist mindset, but you're not going after the right issues in order to take the legs out from underneath the terrorist mindset. And the legs that have to come out from under it is the philosophy, the religion, the psychology of whatever group it is. first you have to, the first thing that you have to do is look at the doctrine in and of itself and see, is it logical? Is it sound? Does it make sense? Does it contradict itself? You look at all those things in order to find out if this is a good thing or not. And from there, you can take those very things that you found and use them in order to provide the individual another viewpoint that they may not have heard about. Now, I've been doing this for years. And I watched the TV program. I heard the man talking about it. And this issue with this young man who'd become radicalized, well, didn't work. And there was a statistic that the broadcaster stated is that between 40 to 60% of terrorists that were in Guantanamo, went back immediately and rejoined the terrorist organizations. Well, why did they do that? What was the mentality that allowed them to be all that time in isolation and then go back and join these groups? Well, I have some of those answers. There's some that may not be, we may not know for sure, depending upon the makeup of the individual. But the ideological side of that and how it taps into the extremism of the individual, it's gasoline and matches. And with that, I set the stage for this first chapter called Snatched. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. That's John 8:32. After a self-imposed 3-year separation from my family, I awaited the arrival of my parents and brother with nervous anticipation. I initiated the separation to lessen the probability that my parents would try by persuasion or force to get me to abandon my involvement in the way. The almost 6 years of my involvement with the way was alongside with my wife. She was deeply entrenched in the thinking and the rituals of the way long before I met her. It was she who persuaded me to join. For the first 3 years of our marriage, my parents had supported or at least assented to our commitment to the way. They had presumed it to be a unique, harmless version of Christianity, one unlike their own. When they first learned of our enthusiasm for the organization, they even volunteered substantial funds towards our tuition. Not long after their gracious acceptance and generosity, however, they discovered the grave concern and certainty the way was reputed to be a manipulative, self-serving, destructive cult. Alarmed, they had sent me a lengthy letter accompanied by some newspaper articles that outlined the dangers and evil intent of the organization I had adopted with such zeal and affection. It was with considerable annoyance I discounted the information they sent. Among other things, I was horror-struck that they offered to pay to have me deprogrammed. Should I opt for it? My understanding of deprogramming was to be tortured until I renounced the group and their beliefs. I did not opt for it. I detested the idea. I fully intended to stay with the way until I died, or Jesus returned. I met the unsolicited attempts by my parents to disparage the way and my involvement in it with deep disgust. After all, I was an adult, in my late 20s. I didn't interfere with their way of worship, even though I knew theirs was wrong. I was very unhappy that they attempted to defame my beliefs and interfere with my involvement in the way. The letter had not only failed to deter my involvement, but it strengthened my resolve to continue with the way. It piqued me, a realization I needed to be ever vigilant to ward off devious efforts, including those of my own flesh, to disrupt my way of worship. The letter and articles are what caused me to not go home for 3 years, to protect myself from any misguided and demonic intentions on their part. Still, I love my brother and my parents. They were family, and much to their credit, and much to my relief after sending the outlandish letter, they made no further effort to disparage or separate me from the faith I cherished. So here I was, on a blistering, cold November afternoon in Miamisburg, Ohio, awaiting the reunion with my parents and my brother. I had not seen my brother for over 3 years as well. My mother and father had come to the Way headquarters to visit us in the spring. It was mid-November of 1984. I was divorced, dismissed from the Way Corps training program, and seeking a way to get back into the program. I alone awaited their presence. On that day, I thought, this is the kind of day that makes you want to curl up in front of a fire with a few special people and just kick back and enjoy life. Amid the clothes-ripping winds and freezing temperatures, my parents arrived. I immediately noted with considerable disappointment that my brother was not with them. Dad explained he was not feeling well and stayed with my grandmother. I understood. We exchanged warm greetings and hugs, and then enjoyed dinner and conversation. We caught up on various topics of family and friends, and later walked around a mall. Visiting further, eventually they returned me to my apartment. We agreed they would pick me up the following morning for breakfast. It was a 5-hour drive home. Afterward, I understood their wanting to get an early start. Once back in my apartment alone, I marveled at how powerful God was to be able to soften my parents' hearts and change their thinking about the Way. Our breakfast date was for around 9 a.m. on November 11th, 1984. The weather was a repeat of the previous day, delivering biting winds and freezing temperatures that smacked at your face the moment you stepped outside. During breakfast, I think I consumed a full pot of coffee, and I ate my fair share while noting that my parents were eating very little. Dad appeared to be having some digestive problems. The gurgling of his stomach was persistent and loud. I wondered if people on the other side of this restaurant could hear. Breakfast ended. Dad said they would drop me off at the apartment and then head for home. But first we needed to go to their motel so they could check out, which was fine with me. While Dad was checking out, I retrieved their bags and placed them on the ground at the rear of their car. I stood there and waited for my father to open the trunk. When he did, I leaned over to place the bags into it. Without warning, someone grabbed me from behind, pinned my arms to my side. Someone else took my feet together, and burly strangers quite literally threw all 6 feet 3 inches of me into the van with amazing precision onto a small mattress. At that moment, I knew exactly what these abductors and the van were about and what their intentions were. As I was being unceremoniously thrown into the van, all I could say was, "Oh," fill in the blank. My expletive was met with sheer silence. The van sped off to unknown places. The Way leadership had warned us all that such abductions happened. And if they did, we were on our own. In addition, I presumed it a possibility for some, but not for me. Never for me. I was intelligent, observant, and had resolved to be extremely vigilant. I knew I would sense any attempt at an abduction coming, and that regardless of the circumstances, I would do whatever needed to outwit my captors and protect myself from being stolen away. Even with my resolve, stuff happens. And it happened with the speed